Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm very excited here because we have this little chat scheduled to talk about this new audiobook, Vicarious, which I just did for Audible and Podium Audio with the fantastic Whedon. But the book was written by a lovely human named Rhett Bruno, who has been just a pleasure to get to know throughout this whole process. And he's going to be joining us today. As soon as I can figure this out. Let's see. Oh, there he is. Hold on. Rhett, let's get you on here. So hopefully that works. Still learning how this is, but we're going to ask him some questions and answer your questions. Rhett, hello.
Hi. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. You keep going in and out a little bit. Wait.
Oh, no. Is that better?
Yes, that is.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Welcome to Untitled. I take it fun, you said?
Yes, I didn't even know how it worked, so I'm glad I have it working.
Well, absolutely. So welcome, everyone. We've got people joining right now, which is fantastic, from all over the world, which is amazing. Yeah, this is incredible. So how are you today? Where are you calling from?
Good. I'm in my office, in my house. Yeah, so just been working all day and now winding down with this. Just in my house. So.
Oh, that's amazing. What are those your covers?
Yeah, my partner makes posters for everything we do just because the art is cool. So.
That's amazing. Is he the same one the art for Vicarious?
No, actually, that was an artist named Fernando Garcia that did it, but he managed the art because he does that for our publisher. So,
of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. We've got it a little bit offline, and it's just been such a great. I've had so much fun getting to know you, and then when they asked me to do this today, I thought, well, let's get Rhett on here because he knows way better than I do about this book. And
Yeah, for sure.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to talk to you for a minute. I meet a lot of kids who, I say kids, they're not all kids. I call them kids because they feel like my kids, because I meet them at conventions all over the world. And so many of them talk to me about how these kind of stories, these supernatural stories that we tell, these crazy worlds that we create and draw people into, whether on screen or in books or in audiobooks, as this case may be, a lot of people are inspired by that to tell their own stories and to get into writing. And they're so excited, but ask me a lot of questions about how to start writing and how to get into this business. And I don't know anything about it. So I figured I'd ask you, what first inspired you to become a writer? Is it something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, so I started writing in like middle school, actually. I dealt with a lot of anxiety issues. So I met with, I guess it was a psychiatrist. I was really young and she suggested I write stuff down, probably like a journal, but I started writing just the stories about video games I was playing. Actually, just kept doing that and wrote my first novel at 16. Just like a crappy fantasy novel that, I tried to get self-published and stuff. And that was really the first time. And then I didn't have much time. I went to college for architecture, actually, and started writing science fiction there. And then just kept writing it and writing it. So I took the more traditional path. I've, got an agent, went through some traditional publishers, and now I do a lot myself. In this case, I'm the publisher of like the ebook, and then Podium Audio does the audiobook. So I kind of mix and match to get the best performance on every format. So yeah, I've kind of done it all, which is different. I'm self-published, hybrid published. I've worked with publishers. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a long time now.
That's really awesome. Well, it seems like your story is so inspired, and the world that you created, when I started reading the book, I was instantly drawn in and I flew through it. And I couldn't wait to kind of dive into that world and see what I could bring to it. But, it's such a fascinating world because we've had so many, social media has taken over our world in a big way. And so I always kind of wonder, at least I do, what's that, next step? What in 100 years and 200 years and 1,000 years, if we keep progressing at this rate, what is society going to look like? And especially with our, admittedly in 2020, I went down a big reality TV black hole.
Of course.
which I had never really done before. I'd only dabbled. And so I could see something like this really coming to fruition. Was there something in particular that sparked this world that Vicarious takes place in?
Uh, so
Or
it's actually pretty funny. So I wrote the original version of this book like 5 years ago. I wrote it basically at work at the architecture firm I was working at, which I shouldn't say, but that was before I went full time. So I wrote it all. I wrote a lot of it there, and I came up with the sort of concept for the world with my brother, which was fun. He was bored at work too, so we were kind of bouncing ideas back and forth. So then I wound up writing the book version and submitting it, and I had a lot of editors who loved it but rejected it because they didn't think the world it makes sense. And it was just funny that it wound up coming out during COVID, because that was all of a sudden when people started reacting like, hey, this world of people not leaving their home or wanting to leave their home could actually happen with just tons of free content. Now, obviously, in this future, they don't have to work because of technology, but that was sort of what I think made the turning point, and that was when I went back and revised it and sort of made it relevant to what was happening in the real world with streaming and everything. And I think it took those things becoming popular for me to figure out how to finish this book, because I mean, I've been working on it for 5 years, which is long for me. I'm usually faster than that, but yeah, so that's where it came from. A lot of help with ideas from my brother. If you know, he has 3 kids, so 3 of the main characters in High Earth are actually named after his kids,
no way.
um, which I changed after they were born. But yeah, Asher is his middle kid. um, so it was a fun thing to be able to actually come up with some ideas alongside of him. So yeah, that's where the book took. It was probably the longest road for any of my books to actually come out.
Well, it was definitely worth the wait for sure. For
Thank you.
who haven't read the book yet, who haven't seen it yet, it's available on audible.com through Podium Audio. And you can hear myself and Will Wheaton, the fabulous talent, as we all know, and voicing the 2 main characters. And I don't know, I've always loved books that shift perspective as well. And I really appreciated that it did go back and forth between the characters, because it you always wonder, well, what is that other person thinking, especially when they're so integral to the story. And you usually don't get that to like a sequel or another book or like the special edition after the whole series is out, and it's right there for us, and it's really lovely.
Yeah, and obviously it's inspired by the Truman Show, if you've watched that, and the kind of idea is most books would be from your character's perspective,
Yeah.
and switching it was making it from the person watching her. So there's sort of like a creepy sci-fi element to it as well, which took a lot of massaging to make it as low amount of creepy as we could.
Yeah.
Especially as far as the ages that I worked the timeline to keep them closer and closer, so he wasn't some old guy watching her. But it was not a perspective I would usually do.
Yeah. Well, it was actually quite interesting to me that their situation and the relationship between those 2 characters was so normalized, and yet that how normal that felt made the whole world seem that much creepier and that much more messed up. And it really, when I was reading the book at least, it made me think a lot about our world and where we are and where we're going. So thank you very much for that.
I'm glad you got. It's not a normal book where the main characters don't meet until like 90% in. Yeah.
To have so much more. You're just waiting for that moment, that one moment. Season 5 of a show where you're waiting for those 2 characters to finally kiss. It's like,
Yeah.
you got to make. Let's get into some questions. How about that?
Yeah.
A lot of people are sending in these. Let's see. Hold on. Can I get them? Yeah, here we go. Let's see. The official Raina Kellum wants to know, do you always have an editor when you want to publish a book?
Well, yeah, I always get it edited. So right now, my partner, who I run Athon Books with, edits all my stuff just because we've worked together so much. He's used to it. But yeah, you should always get stuff edited. It just really depends on the route you go. If you find a publisher, they're going to give you an editor. If you do it yourself, you're going to have to hire someone or risk putting it out without editing, which some people try. I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, you should always get a second look on the book. Like I think this book had probably 3 or 4 editors, which is more than I usually do, but it was more complicated than most of my books.
Oh wow. Well, it makes sense. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in this world to
Yeah.
keep track of. You should have seen. I had a copy of the Word document version of the book on my iPad, and I had every single character that I was doing in my sections highlighted a different color. So
Oh,
it's like
cool.
track of these people to make sure that they're different because there's so many characters and so many great characters. I wanted to make sure that it all made sense.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't know you did it that way, but I think that's the best way so that everyone sounds different. You know who's talking.
To be fair, I'm a huge audiobook fan myself,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm like running or traveling or even just cleaning the house or during quarantine, it's made it a lot easier to reorganize my closet 7 times while listening to books. So I appreciate a good narrator.
That makes sense now because I know it was your first time narrating, but it didn't sound like it was your first time narrating.
Well, thank you. It was, and I was very nervous. Um, Somebody's asking what the hardest part of performing in a booth versus in front of camera. For me, it was the fact that normally I'm just focused on one character, and I can use this setting, and you can imagine what it's like being on a set. But then once you get there, all of the designers have done all the work, and then you finally understand sort of the tone and the cohesiveness of the production. When you're doing a book, reading a book is such a personal experience, and so much of what you get out of it is from your own imagination. So every person's experience reading a book is entirely different. Part of the magic of books, why I love them so much. But I was a bit sort of trepidatious, going, "Oh, I hope this all fits together." Given that, but I think
Yeah,
it's great.
no, it definitely did. I don't listen that often, but I was on a plane and listened to like 4 hours of this, just you and Will going back and forth. It was pretty cool.
That's amazing. I'm looking for questions. All right, there's so many in here. Make sure. Okay, here's a question for you. I'm always curious about this with authors. What was your favorite book growing up?
Growing up,
Or
it
now?
was growing up. It was like these Merlin books, which I really can't remember the titles of, but I know they're like classic young adult fantasy Merlin books. As I got older, it was The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which was like the only book I read in all of high school that I liked. I never really liked those high school books that they force you to read, so I kind of got out of reading. And then when I started writing science fiction, I was reading a lot of the guys from the 60s, so Heinlein, Clark, and all of those. Now I don't really have that much time to read, but all those authors left an impression on me.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, okay. Here's an interesting question from someone who's read the book. And I don't know if you want to reveal this or not. Uh, they said if Gloria didn't die, could Asher have received his memory back since she saw his memories?
Um, that's pretty spoilery. I'll just answer with maybe. Yeah, I mean they're separated though, so it would be tough. It's probably too much distance between them, especially after the ship takes off. So
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. So let's see here. Um, so who was your favorite author in general growing up? Or did you like
my favorite. Sorry, you broke up. What was that?
oh, I just said what as far as like classic authors go, were there any that you looked at
Um,
and said, that's what I want to write like? I like this person's style.
yeah, I loved Robert E. Howard growing up. So he wrote all like the original Conan books.
Yeah,
I read those a ton growing up. So he was definitely my favorite in like those formative high school, early college years.
that's amazing. I always marvel at people who can create worlds that are entirely unique and just entirely as you did in Vicarious. It's so unique in and of itself, and especially as a kid, you just get so drawn into those books. Someone asked a great question. What's your favorite place from the book? Your favorite setting from Vicarious? Like, where would you want to visit?
Well, I probably wouldn't want to live on the asteroid. It's not a very nice place to live, although I did love creating that world probably more. Um, so that would probably be it. I just love this idea of an internalized world in space with the farms all around you. Um, High Earth is great, but I mean that was so hard. That was what took me 5 years was making a world where nobody had to do anything make sense that anybody would do anything, right? Like the main character works for a living even though he doesn't have to. So that was hard to kind of get all the reasons for why he's doing it. And obviously, in the end, he realizes he's doing it for mission over and over and over. But so yeah, I loved creating that asteroid.
I was really fascinated by that. And I was also fascinated sort of the little bits of kindness were left in the sort of decrepit world after they leave this like newly established. It's that survival of humanity that outlasts anything else. It blew my mind because you do realize that, and that's something all of us have learned this year, that no matter what happens in the world, humanity will persist and will win out in the end. So I would say,
Yeah, yeah.
let's see what else. Many folks are asking great questions. I'm just trying to pick the ones that aren't duplicates at this point.
And a lot of people wanting Shadowhunter season 4.
I know. Oh, I want to, man. But what I always say about that, because there was so much more that we wanted to do with Shadowhunters, and we tried to slam it all into the part that we were so fortunate to get to do. But look, if Friends can shoot a 10-year reunion episode, so can Shadowhunters. We'll get there. If they ever reboot it, if they ever create the world, I'm gonna figure out a way to be Claire. So somebody asked, how did you get Will Wheaton to read the audiobook? I mean, Will does a lot.
He doesn't do too. He
Or worked with him, but I hear he's amazing. We have a lot of mutual friends. Did you get to talk to him at all?
No, I haven't gotten to talk to Will at all. He doesn't do that many audiobooks, but so we actually got you first. We were looking at some names, and Maggie at Podium, who did the casting, brought up your name, but was like she hasn't done an audiobook before. And I knew you from Arrow, so I kind of felt like that was a similar character to Mission, just like scrappy but smart.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a good fit, and then we sort of brought on Will later because there's a lot of Ready Player One vibes. This book is a little slower pace, and it's kind of focused on someone who's not doing the fun things you could do with virtual reality. But that was sort of the main reason, was to get him because of that Ready Player One connection. So yeah, we asked for him. I guess they showed him the project and he signed on. But that was it. I actually never had any personal communication with him.
Well, he did a great job, and he really brought so much to the story. But it's always interesting to see like when these worlds combine, because obviously Will has been in this genre for so long, and I've somehow fallen backwards into it between Maze Runner and this and Arrow.
Yeah.
And there's so many universes and people and things that always end up, the world just gets smaller and smaller the more worlds we seem to create. So I always enjoy seeing people cross over into all these different places. Let me scroll down. Maybe the new ones are at the bottom. Ah, there we go. Okay, so what is probably your biggest challenge in writing a book?
Usually starting. It takes me a while to feel confident in an idea to sort of push forward with words. I don't get fast at writing until I'm usually like halfway done.
Yeah.
This one was interesting because I wrote the first draft so fast, like probably 2 or 3 months I wrote the first draft, and then spent a really long time revising it and reworking it. But usually it takes me like 4 to 6 months to actually get started on a book, and then once I'm halfway through, I can pump through pretty fast. But yeah, starting is always the hardest for me. I have to really, really be confident and love an idea to sort of push it through to that point.
That makes a lot of sense. You have to sort of be the master. dive in and
Yeah.
really craft it. I mean, I have so much respect for writers. I've had long conversations with a lot of TV writers just because I'm that actor who likes to be involved, and I'm that actor who goes, okay, what is your vision for this season and how to help? But I always marvel at how they just kind of have this grandiose vision that can somehow have all these little stories intertwining. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm getting this question a lot, and I'm not really sure if it's something you can answer or not, but a lot of people are asking how you deal with writer's block, and if it's something that happens to you, or if once you are inspired by a story, you can just go, or is there like a technique that you use to avoid that?
So a lot of writers kind of just push through, but a lot of writers I know kind of are able to just sit down and just blankly just write words, get stuff down. For me, I tend to, if I'm not feeling it, I'm just not going to try because the words are going to come out really badly anyway.
Yeah.
So the good thing is I was in architecture, so there was a lot of, I was writing on the side, going to a day job, and that was tough. Now that I'm doing publishing, like my day job work winds up helping my writing work. So I don't feel guilty just taking a couple of weeks off and not writing anything because I'm just not feeling it. So yeah, it really depends if you're a full-time writer that needs to keep producing to keep earning, or if you're doing something else so you could take time to make sure you're writing when you're at your best. I don't think there's any one answer for writer's block besides eventually you just have to do it. And maybe give up on an idea that's giving you writer's block and try something new for a little.
That makes that makes a lot of sense, because I'm sure, as with most creative exploits, sometimes you have to walk away from it, sometimes you have to do something else for a while and come back to it, and other times you have to figure out why you're hitting this wall.
Yeah.
And then you can break it down or climb over it, depending on the situation, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's it. It's not easy.
Yeah. But one other question I had for you, just overall, what would your biggest advice be to aspiring writers as they're kind of embarking on these creative exploits?
Show people. I know so many writers I know writers who've written like a million words and just never showed anyone because they don't think it's good enough. And getting that sort of feedback, even from people who critique, or even just putting it out on Amazon and seeing what readers think, it helps you grow as a writer, even the bad stuff. Like I learned a lot from a lot of 1-star reviews when I was first starting writing, because it's not easy. It's like painting. Like most people are gonna like it, but a lot of people are gonna hate it too. So yeah, you just need to show people and put it out there. I think obviously you should keep writing, keep reading and writing and putting down words, but definitely don't just sit on a bunch of words, because I know plenty of writers who wrote something, didn't have it edited, threw it up, and now are bestsellers making millions of dollars. So, anything could happen.
Yeah. That's the thing with anything creative, it's so subjective, and
Mm-hmm.
our whole heart and soul into these things. They're so precious. And it can be the scariest thing sometimes to show people and to put it out there and go, okay, here's my heart and soul. Please don't crush it.
Yeah, exactly.
More often than not, you find that you're pleasantly surprised because people are so astounded that you've done something and you've been creative and you put yourself out there. And even that accomplishment, the creation alone, is astounding. So
Yeah.
room for improvement from there. And it's amazing. That's great advice, Rhett.
Thank you.
So other than your nieces and nephews, someone's asking, how did you find good names for your characters?
So Mission was named before like the book was even written. I just for some reason was attached to that name for the character. Probably because it was the name of a character in Knights of the Old Republic, and that was like my favorite game growing up. Otherwise, a lot of the characters, 3 of the main characters, are named after my nieces and nephews. Other ones, it's kind of just hit and miss, or my editor Steve Bollier, who edits for me, notices I tend to use a lot of names with the same letters, so he'll be like, "No, can't use that. Think of a new name." So it's sort of going back and forth. I try to make sure every name feels different cadence, different first letter, so people don't get confused. Especially on audio, it can get confusing if there's two people with the same letter in the first, like same cadence. It does get confusing. So that's how I do it. Main characters, I probably spend a lot more time thinking up. Other ones, sometimes they just come as I'm writing, and then I'm like, well, I kind of like that. I'll keep it.
Well, it certainly helped me as I was figuring out each character because I really had nothing to do on the book. And so
Yeah.
I feel like so much came from every single one of the names that you gave the characters, from Alora to Cassiopeia to everybody in politics. Like, oh, I know who this person is because of their name and the way they speak. And I went, all right, this makes.
Well, that's good. I probably should have given like a guide ahead of time to help with that. But I'm glad that worked.
It was fun because I'd never done an audiobook. So I went, I've never been told how to do an audiobook. I don't know. I guess I just make an audiobook that I would want to listen to and hopefully it.
Yeah, and I've worked with so many narrators. They all do it differently. Somewhat like a total outline of every character and their accent and how they act and the arc even of the whole book before they start reading. And then some just do it. So I never give anything unless the narrator asks.
It was daunting, but I'm always one that I love a challenge. So it was a very welcome one. So thank you.
I'm
Also,
glad.
I was really in love with the book, so it made it a lot of fun to get to act it out.
Oh, well, that's awesome to hear.
Let's see. If you have any other questions for us, folks, we're going to wrap up in just a few minutes. But we want to make sure we answer as many of your questions as possible. And Rhett, tell us one more time, how do you get the online book and then the audiobook as well? Because I know there's two different things that are out in the world.
Yeah, so the book is called Vicarious. I've seen some people popping in asking. The book is called Vicarious by Rhett Bruno. You could get it on Audible for $1 if you have an Audible subscription. If you don't, if you buy the ebook first, actually on Amazon, you could add the audio on for like $7.50. So it's like I have the ebook cheap, knowing I was coming on this, and a lot of people don't have Audible subscriptions, so you could get it for like $8.50, 13 hours of audiobook. So those are the main ways to get it: Audible or Amazon. If you just search my name or Vicarious, you'll find it.
Yes, awesome. And just a big, big thank you to you and to Podium Audio and to Audible for making this process so fun, and to Will Wheat, being part of it. This has been so great chatting with you today. Thank you so, so much, Rhett. I really.
Thank you for having it on and all the kind words about the book. It meant a lot. This was like the longest I've ever written something, so it's really cool to see people are liking it.
I have gotten so many comments from people about how much they love the book and how much the world has drawn them in and how much they're responding to these characters. So it's really exciting to kind of unleash this world onto the world and let people experience it. So I'm so, so glad to bring a voice to your story. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I hope you keep narrating because, like I said, I don't listen to a lot of books, and you definitely were great at it. So that's cool.
Well, hey, if you ever write a Vicarious sequel, if you need around.
Of course. I would never change narrators. I don't do that.
Well, have a lovely rest of your weekend, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming.
Bye.
Bye.